Welcome, everybody. Week 9, Consistently Cashin podcast back with you. Shaking it up a little bit this week. I'm actually getting a clutch game here. I'm actually here on the podcast. This is Ron Rigney with you. Colby Conway out with the missus purchasing a dog this week, so that's kind of cool. But I am able to bring in the man, the myth, the legend, Canton's favorite son, Mr. Bob Lung. Bob, how are you on this fine Friday afternoon?
Doing great. Enjoying some very nice warm weather here in Canton, Ohio. Hit I think about 68, maybe even 70 today. It's supposed to be nice this weekend as well. So kind of our little, we call Indian summer, and we're excited about that. All that really means is that I get to spend most of the weekend cleaning up more leaves. But hey, you know what? Warmth is warmth, and I'll take it anytime here in Ohio. So, but good to be here. Glad Colby's out there getting a dog, and I think what's he getting? Bernie Doodles, something like that. I don't know.
Don't remember. It was
something
like,
expensive,
yeah.
Something that, but that's good for him.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's good to be back. I haven't been on the Consistently Cashin in a while, so it's good to be here and talking about some DFS stuff.
For sure. And we're going to have that ready for you. Of course, go to bigguyfantasysports.com. We've got the podcast that'll be up tomorrow. Of course, Colby and I have our article up each week. We give you some write-ups. We explain what we're thinking, give you a couple lineups to go off and maybe even take some of our stuff and build your own. And don't forget, you head over there, you use promo code CC2020, get $5 off that VIP subscription. It gets you the Consistently Cashin'. It gets you the Profit Like It's Hot. It gets you the weekly waiver articles. It gets you the David Gauthieri stuff. It gets you Bob's report, consistency report after each week. Gives you the year-to-date stuff the week, so definitely go over and check that out. So as we get into it, we're going to look at it, just kind of break it down by each position, let you know what we like for the week. And there's some really, really solid matchups heading into week 9. So I'm going to start by giving you a couple quarterbacks. I'm going to give you one. Bob was able to compare some notes with Colby. He's going to hit you off as well with another quarterback. So my guy that you're going to see in both of my lineups is going to be Josh Allen. And if you haven't noticed, the Seahawks are not good defensively, especially against the pass. They're number 1 in the league as far as giving up fantasy points to quarterback and wide receiver. I like that a lot for Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen, we talked about him on the Consistency Show last week. He slowed down a little bit, but I think he's going to build on that 50% clutch rating he's got. I think he definitely gets a clutch game here. A couple guys on that. You'll see a couple of those receivers later on in our lineups here. Now, the only bad part about Josh Allen this week, he is $8,200 on FanDuel, so he is one of the more expensive quarterbacks, but I feel like looking at some of the other positions, there's a couple of nice options with some really, really juicy matchups that are going to be some lower level stuff. So I think if you go with that 8,200, I think it's a solid play, and I think you're going to be able to save some money on the back end of your lineup to be able to go through with that. So, Bob, who you got as your QB1 this week in DFS?
All right, well, Colby and I discussed, and I know this is going to be shocking to everybody listening, but we picked Deshaun Watson. I know. It's really surprising. I think second place was Deshaun Watson as well, but Deshaun Watson is his pick, and for good reason. Going against the Jacksonville Jaguars, they've allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. He's piled up a ton of stats. In fact, you got to remember, he just played them in week 5. He put up 359 yards and 3 scores. He's 71% consistent on the year. It's kind of hard not to say. I mean, as much as, I love to bust on you about Deshaun, picking Deshaun all the time, this one's kind of a no-brainer. So, yeah, we're going to go Deshaun Watson.
I think that sounds good. And, like we said, that's definitely not a Colby homer. Well, it is kind of a Colby homer, but it does actually make a little bit of sense. Jacksonville has been the opposite of good against the pass. So moving on to the running back spot. So a couple guys that I wanted to get in my lineup here, and my FanDuel one, I went with the guy that you're gonna talk about, Bob. So I won't mention his name yet. But when I went over to DK, the salaries were a little different, and so I had to get a little bit creative there. And as I was looking down the line, Justin Jackson is a guy that I like this week at running back. I like the fact that he's only $4,900 on DK, so he is a little bit cheaper. So like I said, if you want to pay up for the Josh Allens of the world, he's a nice little pivot off some of those more expensive guys that you can't fit in your lineup along with Josh Allen. They've got the Raiders this week. Justin Herbert in there, showing that he is an NFL caliber franchise quarterback. That's going to open up things for Justin Jackson a little bit. He's going to catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield. And plus, the Raiders are pretty friendly to running backs in fantasy. They allow the 6th most points to the position. And Justin Jackson's been solid. He hasn't been ultra consistent, but he is coming off. He was our 9th most clutch guy coming out of week 8, put a nice little 19 points on the board in your fantasy league. So I think Justin Jackson at 4,900 is a no-brainer when you're on DK.
Oh yeah, that's a damn nice price. Like you said, anytime you get somebody that cheap and can put up double digits for sure, that's a good one. So I'm leaning towards, the one thing Colby and I agree on is that as much as he's a Houston homer, which he is, he also understands when they suck. And they suck at stopping the run. There's no question about every time we do the prop bets, we pretty much look at, okay, is there a running back in there that's going against the Texans? And for good reason, because they give up a lot of points. So far this year, 3rd most fantasy points per game to running backs. This week, Jacksonville's got Jake Luton under center. So we're going to go James Robinson because obviously they got to run the ball a lot. And without Gardner Minshew in there, Uncle Rico to help us out, that they're going to rely on James Robinson, and they're going to be handing him the ball a ton. And on top of the fact that Houston's got this poor run defense when they have a healthy set of defensive players, this week they're without Jacob Martin, Whitney Merciless, and Dylan Cole. So this went from bad to worse. So definitely Robinson's a solid play, 86% consistent on the year. So really nice price, really nice back, and going against Texans, it's always kind of a win-win-win across the board.
For sure, those injuries are going to be huge too. But it is already a terrible run defense, and it's hard to figure out how it could be even more terribler, I guess is what we'll say.
Terribler.
Yeah, because you got to add that ER.
Terrible.
That's how bad it's going to be.
So
we'll head on over to the wide receiver spot, and I kind of foreshadowed a little bit here. You're going to see Buffalo early and Buffalo often on this article, and so I'm going to go with the bill that I like the most this week, and that's Cole Beasley. He's a little bit cheaper. I don't have the price right offhand, but you got to scroll down a little bit to find him. But for a guy that you got in your seasonal leagues that probably cost you $1 in the auction, and I think I got him in most places around 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
Guy that's 25th in total points, 75% consistent, coming off a couple of solid games. And like I said before, not only are the Seahawks the number 1 most friendly defense to quarterbacks and fantasy points allowed, it's the same thing at the wide receiver spot. And so, as I closed the article out, I was kind of channeling my one of my favorite characters on Parks and Rec, Gene Ralphio Saperstein. And if you watch that show, you know what I'm talking about, because Seattle, as far as covering the pass, they are the worst. What you got, Bob?
What you got? So I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy. I'm not going to continue on the Buffalo train. I think we know that. But Stephon Diggs obviously is a good pick. But Jerry Jeudy, I mean, again, another defense out there that's not very good against the pass is Atlanta. Their secondary has given up a ton of points. And while Jerry Jeudy hasn't been all that consistent this year, let's also remember that Drew Lock hasn't been playing every game this year either. So, but he's coming off a season high in yardage when Drew Lock was back this past week. He's going to put up a lot of points. There's definitely a lot of consistency when you're playing against a bad defense like the Falcons. So I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy as my number 1 receiver. And like you said, we're also in on Diggs and anybody from Buffalo, anybody against Seattle as well. So, but Jerry Judy's our pick for one of our wide receivers this week.
For sure, and I think I'm definitely rolling with Jeudy in one lineup. I might have got him in both, but I know I believe it's FanDuel that I have him in. So sticking with Denver Broncos, and there's a couple guys here this week that I like. I'm actually going to go with I'll let you have the marquee guy here that you and Colby talked about, Bob. Okay. I'm going to go with a real cheap option. Like I said, he's another guy on the back end of your lineup that is super cheap this week and has a great matchup, and that's Jordan Atkins for Houston. Now, we've talked about that Houston-Jacksonville game quite a bit. The guy that Bob is going to talk about is facing the defense that is the most generous in fantasy to the tight end, Guess who's number 2? That's right, it's Jacksonville. So there may not be a ton of yardage and catches for Jordan Atkins, but I don't think it's too out of the realm of possibility for him to at least sneak in the end zone. So it could be a touchdown-dependent game, but it could be one of those things where he posts 3 catches for 34 yards and a score. Right. And when you're looking down at the salaries here, he's way, way down there. You got to scroll almost all the way down. I believe he's almost in the $3,500 range, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to quickly get my lineup here so I can tell you how much he does cost. Yeah, he's way down there at, where's my DK? Got too many social media apps here. So, anyway, I don't know. I can't find him, but he's cheap. I know that. So, could be touchdown dependent, but if he gets you that touchdown, get you 30, 40 yards, and get you 3 or 4 receptions, it's definitely going to bring you some value. So, Bob, who you got at that? And this is a guy that I like a lot as well. I actually have him as my tight end in both lineups. Atkins is my flex in one. Who we got as our number 1 guy this week?
Well, like you said, we're going to stay with the Denver Bronco offense going against Atlanta. And Atlanta is not only bad against the wide receivers, but it's the worst against the tight end, as you mentioned. Only the Bengals have allowed more receiving yards than Atlanta this year, and no team has allowed more fantasy points than the Atlanta Falcons to tight end. So we're going to go with Noah Fant. Noah Fant has also been very consistent this year, 67% consistent on the year. And his 7 receptions, albeit for only 47 yards last week, were a season high. So Drew Lock is definitely, no pun intended, locked in on Noah Fant and Jerry Jeudy. They're going to continue that this week.
I like it. And so last but not least, we're going to look at those defense and special teams, because if you get that right, I feel like that's a really underrated part of DFS. That's something that can really compensate for guys that you miss. So give you some defense here. I think it's pretty obvious who you go with this week, and you got to pay up for him. That's the only downside. So that's another thing. You go with Josh Allen, you go with this team. You got to pay a little bit of money there, but those guys like Jordan Atkins are going to allow you to do it, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. We mentioned before, Ben DiNucci, Garrett Gilbert, could be anybody. Looks like it might be Cooper Rush. I don't care. Cooper Rush, Color Rush, Prog Rock Band Rush, Mount Rushmore, Rush Limbaugh. Doesn't matter. Steelers are going to dominate. Zeke is not getting in the end zone, like we told you on the Prop It Like It's Hot. Cowboys are going to struggle to move the ball. That Steelers defense is no joke. I think Steelers is the only option for you. I will give you a bonus option, though. Washington, guys who play football, I like them this week as well. I believe they're playing the Giants, and they're a little bit cheaper if you want to pivot off that expensive Pittsburgh defense. Yeah,
definitely. As I say, another one I was even looking at just based on the offense they're going against is New England against the Jets, but they're probably more expensive. But, you know, we all know the Jets' offense is just brutally bad. So definitely New England. You know, their defense has been playing well. It's just their offense hasn't done anything remotely decent. So, but that's a good one as well. But, yeah, love the Pittsburgh call. I mean, like you said, going against Dallas, that's just going to be so ugly.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun, and I feel for you, like myself, and like we were talking about off the air. If you're starting Ezekiel Elliott this week, or you have to start Amari Cooper, it's not going to be pretty.
CeeDee Lamb or Michael Gallup or any of those kind of guys.
Not going to be good. So there you have it. You got our picks for the week. Come on over to BigGuyFantasySports.com. Check out the article. Should be posted sometime tomorrow. You've got our number 1 guys there. You're going to have 4 lineups to work with. Bob, appreciate you joining us on the show. What do you got in the hopper? Where can we find you? What have you been up to?
Of course, all the articles from the Week 8 review, consistency-wise. So if you want to check out the consistency reports and consistency articles, they're all there, Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Of course, just follow me on Twitter at Bob_Lung, and we're always bringing you this stuff every week. So help your consistency. If your teams haven't struggled a little bit this year, come on over, check out the consistency report. Might find some nice waiver wires, like a Cole Beasley that you may not realize is having a pretty solid, consistent year. There's a lot of those players out there, and the report can show you that. And cool thing, you can put in your own scoring method and see who the most consistent players are in your league, not just a standard kind of scoring thing. So thanks again for having me, Ron. It's a pleasure to be on, and I'm sure you guys are going to win some more money this weekend.
I'm hoping we can keep the streak alive. So, like I said, if you haven't been over to Big Guy Fantasy Sports, get over there, get that VIP subscription, use that code CC2020, get that $5 off. And that pretty much wraps it up. So we appreciate you listening to us this week. We'll see you back here next week. No matter if it's Colby, myself, whoever. Bob, thank you again for pinch hitting for Colby. And I'm going to borrow from my other podcast, the Nasty Cast. May the fantasy gods shine upon you. We're out.